have Mike Protich with me. Mike is the former singer for Red Sun Rising and now the current singer for The Violent. The Violent has released 4 singles so far that I know of, a few videos, and we're going to find out what Mike has in store for us with The Violent in the future. And Mike, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime. Uh, I Red Sun Rising, everybody's got that question. Fairly short-lived, and it was kind of sudden right around COVID time. The transition when that started kicking in. Um, the band somewhat, has splintered, kind of found their own ways. You know, is there something specific? Was it because you and Ryan started the band, I think, and
Yeah.
yeah, I heard you say one time that you were presented a structure to the band. Um, that structure breaks down, and people tend to go their separate ways. Is there anything specific that you wanted to do that Ryan or anybody else wasn't on board with?
I think it wasn't a specific thing. It was just like, you know, I've I've said this a bunch of other times. I like to compare it being in a band to being in a marriage or having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You know, when you first meet someone, you fall in love, and it's like I'm going to be with this person for the rest of my life, and this person's perfect, and there's that honeymoon stage, and everything you do is just feels right. And then you start settling in, and you know life happens, and you start wanting different things that other person might not agree with, and you either compromise until you get to a point where the other person might not want to compromise anymore, and they just want to do it their own way. And that happens both ways. And just like in a relationship, it's comes a time where it's like, well, if we've reached a stalemate here and no one's willing to budge, then it's probably best that we split ways.
Yeah.
And that's probably the easiest way to explain that. Now, obviously, there's a lot of um, there's a lot of moving parts that go along with that. That's like a very simplistic explanation of that, but without really getting dirty into it, that's the easiest way I can say. And a lot of people don't realize that you spend, when you're in a band and you're touring with somebody and you're living in
Mhm.
basically a small apartment on wheels for a couple years, sometimes a van that's even smaller than that, you know, things happen, and that's just the reality of it.
Totally, and I think everybody kind of gets that. Um, Ryan's doing his own thing. You are doing The Violent, and it's not Red Sun Rising. Does it feel like an extension for you of Red Sun Rising? I mean, it's close in band members. It's from almost
Right.
everybody except Ryan, but uh, it sounds different to me. For you, does it feel a lot different?
Um, I think it feels different in a lot of ways, and even though Pat and Dave, who were in Red Sun Rising and are now in the Violent as well, even though we had toured together and we've done music together for a long time, um, even before Red Sun Rising, I knew those guys for years. Um, it feels fresh because we have a single focus on something new together. And it's not like they came into a band that was already started, and it's like you kind of got to play by the rules of what was already been here. It's like we're doing this together, and let's figure out what this sound is going to be. And that was an early conversation that we had was, we don't want it to be, we don't want people to say that could have just been a Red Sun Rising album. Let's try to really explore what we can do sonically outside of this. I'm very proud of Red Sun Rising. I wrote a lot, the majority of that music. It's like I have my hand in every single one of those songs. I'm proud of it. I'll always be proud of it. But I did that. That's there, and we recorded it. It's there forever. So let's try to do something else. And I think that was where we were mentally, and I think we'll continue to push that boundary. And you see bands evolved. I think by the time we only have 4 songs out, by the time we have 10 or 15 songs out, we might be even further away from what Red Sun Rising sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear these 4 songs, and I don't hear Red Sun Rising. I really don't, and that's pretty strange. I think a lot of people are expecting that, especially with the voice. I mean, you have the same voice, and the 2 other parts are moving in that Red Sun Rising machine as well. But it's not Red Sun Rising. It is the violent. For me, it definitely was.
Right.
Um, if COVID doesn't happen, because all this kind of happened right around that time when this really started to kick in. If COVID never happened, would the violent have still happened?
I think it all happened. I don't know in what capacity. We joke about this all the time because the pandemic was, in a way, basically like throwing gasoline on the violent. Because as Red Sun Rising kind of came to an end, we played that final, like, last summer of festivals that we did, and I think it was the end of 2019. We were kind of talking about starting something new, and me, Dave, and Pat had always talked about it even when we were in Red Sun Rising. Like, hey, wouldn't it be fun to just do a side project together, just the 3 of us? Well, when Red Sun Rising came to an end, that was the first conversation. It was like a joke. Oh, that project we were talking about, we should probably start doing that. So we did. So I had a bunch of songs that I already had written, and I was like, check these out, see if you guys, these aren't songs that really fit the Red Sun Rising sound anyway. So that's why I never presented them.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, so let's start working. And then the pandemic happened, and we were like, shit, what do we do now? So we were all home. We live in different states. And that's all we had to do. Like,
Right.
no one could go anywhere, especially the initial lockdown. So it actually fueled it. So it's like, that's all we could do was work on this.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, it was a blessing. That's the silver lining of that.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. That's right. Happened right there.
Yeah.
What will we get with the violent? Are we going to get an EP? Are we going to get a full record? Because, I hear these 4 songs and I definitely want to hear more. Are we going to
Yeah.
get a full album?
A full album. I think there'll be an EP. Well, I know there'll be an EP before a full album. Now, having said that, we have more than an album's worth of material finished.
Awesome.
And we've been very conservative about releasing that music because we were unsure of what the scope of touring was going to look like. Now that there's a little clearer picture of that, I think you'll start seeing us release music a little quicker, at a little quicker of a pace, and probably more songs at a time. So that's definitely the next step, is probably going to be the EP, which will eventually lead into the album. But it was really fun to release songs at that pace and one at a time, because rock bands typically don't do that. And that was kind of
Mhm.
fun to see how each one reacted. And then we could kind of step back and kind of say, well, we have actually X amount of songs done. Judging on the reaction of that one, what should be the next one? And we've never been in a position to be able to do that before. So that was kind of a fun chess game,
Yeah.
with our own fans to play.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's very beneficial. It's a great marketing tool, if you will, to, give the people what they want,
Definitely.
really cool. Yeah. And I love the sound. It's got a touch of keyboard
Thank you.
electronic sound that maybe Red Sun Rising didn't have. The little more amped up electronic sound. Was that something you wanted to do intentionally, or did it just happen that way? And did you want to maybe do more of that while you were in Red Sun Rising and it just didn't happen?
Red Sun Rising was a different animal because we had 5 band members. So and me included, played guitar and bass and sometimes some the little key parts, but everything in Red Sun Rising was organic. So between the five of us who could all play pretty much multiple things and sing, we could make almost anything we put on the record actually happen live organically. Where when you have only three guys, you have to get a little more creative with that.
Hmm.
If you've seen like our Sirius XM live stream, you'll notice that there's some guitars that or some songs where I don't even play on, and you're like, how is it making that big of a sound? Well, we had to figure out ways where Pat, the drummer, could trigger some electronic pads to do some stuff that we, and then Dave, we basically affect his guitar and the guitar. So there's a lot of bands that have accomplished that before, but it allows me to free up and just be able to sing, and that's fun. But yeah, you got to be a little more creative, and I think the electronic sound came out of uh, another product of the pandemic, where we were sitting at home in our home studios and using MIDI keyboards and figuring out different creative ways to build sounds when we couldn't just get in a room and jam together like we used to.
Right. Yeah. A little more of the technology. Yeah. Yeah. In play there. And I love the new sound. That's why I think that's a lot of the reason it doesn't sound like Red Sun Rising to me. It's a little more amped up, a little more electronic, and a little more powerful, to be honest,
Definitely.
for me. Tell me about the writing
I like that.
process. I know that you and Ryan were a big team in Red Sun Rising for a long time. Um, is each member, you got each member, all three of you involved in the violent?
I think the way it was very similar in Red Sun Rising as well. Um, somebody would come up with an idea. Typically, Ryan or I would come up with an initial idea, and then we would hash it out together and then present it to the band. So that was kind of how it started, and then it started to become, I was doing a lot more writing on my own. So that's why I had this giant database of songs where some of them now became violent songs because I knew they wouldn't work in Red Sun Rising.
Right.
Like some of these songs that we just released, that wouldn't have worked. So, but those were songs I was starting to write during the Red Sun Rising time. So I was definitely trying to think of the word more prolific as far as the songwriting. So I had just more ideas, not necessarily that they were always better. I just had more ideas to work with. So
Right.
going into the violent, it was kind of like, all right, let's go to this stash of songs, and some of them are completely done, some of them are partly done, and then I would present them to the guys, and it's like I basically say, which one of these ideas gets you excited, and the ones that got them excited, like, let's work on that, and then they kind of throw their hand in it where they have ideas. So I almost have too many ideas to like choose myself. I almost like someone else to be like, you tell me what gets you excited and what you want to work on, and then we'll work on that.
Yeah. Hey, that's great. That's never a bad thing, right? To have too many ideas. Awesome. Um,
Right. And now that doesn't mean that they're all good. Some of them suck.
well, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
um, when did you decide to pursue a career in music? What was it like for you growing up? Did you come from a musical family? When was that switch turned on where you said, "This is what I'm going to do"?
I always had music around in my house. My mother played piano, and part of her like weekly uh, ritual, I guess, is she would clean the house, having me and my sister do our designated chores as well. But she would clean the whole house, and then when she was done, she sat and played piano for about an hour, and that was like her release, and that was like and a Saturday, and I was always around that. So we always had like a upright piano. I think it was like a Yamaha or a Steinway or something in our house. I don't even remember what the brand was, but it was just an old wooden piano, and I would tinker on it. My sister would tinker on it, like so. It was always around. And then her brother, actually, my uncle Ernie, he is a musical major, so he was always kind of like I was always in within earshot of him talking about like why music was working. Like, oh, this because he was that fifth harmony. You hear that fifth harmony? I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But like, he would always use the now I do, but so that was always kind of around in my family, and my mother was always playing music. So there was never a person that said like, hey, we're a musician family. You have to be a musician. That was never pressure. Like I played a lot of sports. Sports were always like my first priority. And it wasn't until I got my first guitar when I was like 11 and I like fell in love with it. So I would go splitting time constantly. I would go to my football practice or my basketball practice and I would want to come home and just play on my guitar until I was told to go to bed. Like I wasn't like a big video game guy.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to play my guitar constantly. And that's kind of where I fell in love with it. I was in bands in high school. And always doing like the battle of the bands, like the classic stuff you would do in high school.
Yeah.
And then I went to college and I was at Kent State and I was like, I'm going to focus on college now because I'm not going to be a musician, whatever. I'm going to try to get my education and, just the typical mindset. And there were so many cool clubs in the Akron, Kent State area that had great live music. I mean, there's a lot of history there. Like Joe Walsh always played at Kent State,
Yeah.
and just seeing that live music like brought it back. I'm like, man, I gotta get in a band again and play live again. And so in college, that's kind of when Red Sun Rising happened, and we started playing gigs back then, just like at the Kent State bars. And
Yeah.
college kids started showing up, and it started to become a thing, and I got addicted to it. And so I kind of just fell into it, and it just became this labor of love. And I was like, no matter what, now I have to do this for the rest of my life, even if it's not professionally. I have to play music in front of people.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we're so glad you do. Definitely.
Thank you.
Oh man. Um, I hear the violent, and I think it's a style of music that you guys are young and you appeal to that young crowd. But you also appeal to that classic, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest guy like myself. You know, there's a wide age range that the violent will reach. I just feel that, and Red Side Rising was much the same, I think, in that way. That process of appealing, does that ever come into play when you're writing? Do you write to appeal to that certain crowd, or even the aesthetic of the band? Is that a thought when you're putting together things for the band?
Actually, no. Believe it or not, I mean, going back to listening to music in my house, like we listened to a lot of the Beatles. We listened to a lot of classic rock. Um, like my mom had the Toys in the Attic album from Aerosmith, so
Mhm.
I fell in love with those like big vocals and like just that rock and roll sound and singing with a lot of voice. And the harmonies obviously from the Beatles, and a lot of those like 80s rock bands had the big harmonies, the big vocals. So that was like my ear is just hears that, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear a big chorus, and I want to hear big vocals. And um, as I got older, I started to discover other things like grunge, and that was kind of the first music that I would seek out as a a young musician. I was like in love with like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden,
Hmm.
and starting to try like big singers, big voice, and that's kind of where that influence comes from. I always want to hear. There's a touch of that classic rock that's always in me. So
Yeah.
if you listen to my music, a lot of the times the chorus, I want the chorus to really like be anthemic almost, and that's just what I want to hear. I don't really think about it. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah. And it's really cool. I mean, that's a great explanation because that's what I hear. I do hear those 90s more influences, and but with a classic rock, kind of hard rock, classic arena sound. And that's
Yeah.
I don't hear that a lot. It's great that because that spans generations, really does. Is there a dream? We talk about those influences and stuff, and a love of classic rock as well. Is there a dream collaboration for you?
Obviously, if I could just be a fifth member of the Beatles, I would do that.
Yeah, wouldn't
Uh,
we all?
but yeah, I mean, yeah, and as a musician, I just think there's so many people that have influenced me over the years. I cite Maynard Keenan from Tool and a Perfect Circle, and uh, Chris Cornell. Those and lyricists who really definitely made a huge impact on me throughout the years. But yeah, I think a lot of that it's just really hard to say. I think I'd have a laundry list,
Yeah.
and then I would probably be like, yeah, and then there's that guy, and then there's that, and there's that, and then there's that, and I don't think I could. I don't think I could narrow that down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And that comes through in the writing and the playing and the voice as well. So and all that the music you're making, it's great to hear those things. Um when are we gonna get another song? When are we gonna get that EP? Is there a time frame?
Well, it's funny that you asked because we do have some news coming up very soon. Um, you know, I think we've had our fans now in over this last year of just giving them one song every quarter, basically. We've basically had them on like a slow drip IV of music, and I think
Killing
it's
me.
time to kind of open that up a little bit. So yeah, we're getting real close, and I think this next bone that we're going to throw everybody is going to have a little more meat on it. So that's all I can say. But there's going to be more coming.
That's great news, man. That's great news. You gonna come see me back in Chicago?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still got a lot of friends there. I love the city of Chicago. So if the second I have a chance to get back there, especially to play, I'm going to do it.
It sounds great, man. Sounds great. Well, I look forward to it, Mike, and I'll be there, man, for sure. I looking forward to seeing you guys
Love
and
it.
seeing the live show for sure. Uh, Best of luck to you. I can't wait for the new music and that bigger meaty bone that I'm gonna get in a little while.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, for sure, man. We're gonna eat it up for sure. Mike, thank you so much. Where can people find you online with the Violent?
I think the easiest way, we're pretty much the Violent Music on all the social platforms. Um, so, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, the big three, we're kind of the most active on. So just find us there, and yeah, tell us that you sent them, and then we'll say hello. We're pretty active. We try to respond to as much messages and comments as we can. So say hello and stay connected with us.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure, Mike. Take care. Enjoy that Florida scenery behind you.
Thank you, thank you. Enjoy
Thanks.
that Chicago winter. I won't miss that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know about enjoying it, but we'll roll with it. Mike, I'll see you when you get here, man. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye bye.